This is Chris, the owner of Safe Drivers Florida. I'm going to be going over the proper way to park when you take your driving test. If you haven't seen the video on the 4 concepts that make parking easier, you should probably watch that first. This way, as I'm going to be walking through this, it'll make a little bit more sense. But there's a few things that you have to remember when you park during your test. One, you do need your turn signal. So always put on your left turn signal as you pull into the spot. Otherwise, if you don't, it is a 4-point deduction. 2, always stay as far away from the space as possible. So you want to stay close to these white lines on the right without rolling on top of them. 3, you want to have the sharpest turn possible. So don't turn until you think our front bumper is at the first pole. Once it is, turn hard. And of course, go slow. Use the brake to control your speed, no more than about 2 to 3 miles an hour. But look at only the pole on the right. Try to stay as close as you can to the pole on the right without hitting it. Once you're passing the pole, just look straight ahead. Focus on letting the car straighten out. And then once the car is straight, straighten out the wheel. Roll up a little bit, and then stop the car. And at that point, the examiner should tell you to put the car in park. At this point, once they do, they're going to ask you a question. This will be the only question throughout the entire driving test. They're going to ask you, what do you do when you're on a hill? Now, they have 4 different variations of the question. Depending on which one they ask you will determine what your answer is. The good thing is 3 out of the 4 variations all have the exact same answer. So if they ask you any of these 3, what do you do when you're parking downhill with a curb, C-U-R-B, a curb, downhill without a curb, or uphill without a curb? You would tell them, put the car in park, put on the emergency brake, turn the wheel all the way to the right, and then turn off the car. Now, you don't need to physically demonstrate any of that, just verbally answer it. So like I said, it's park, emergency brake, turn the wheel right, turn off the car for any of those 3. The only one that's different is if they ask you, what do you do when you're parking uphill with a curb? For that one, you would say, put the car in park, put on the emergency brake, turn the wheel to the left, and then turn off the car. So that's the only thing that changes, is which way you turn the wheel. I always tell my students to remember the one that's different. Uphill with a curb is left. Everything else is always to the right. So this way, if they say anything else besides uphill with a curb, you know it's to the right. And then to remember all 4 steps in general, you can use the word PET, but with 2 T's. So P-E-T-T, park, emergency brake, turn the wheel, turn off the car. Now, when you back out of the parking spot, you have to be very careful. Failure to yield the right of way is an automatic failure during the driving test. So you want to put the car in reverse, which I just did, but before you take your foot off the brake, you must be totally stopped and look both ways before you move, because if you don't and somebody is approaching, that's an automatic failure. As you go back out of the parking space, continue looking both ways to make sure that the aisle is staying clear, and always leave the wheel completely straight until the front bumper is even with the 2 poles. So just watch the poles. Once your front bumper is even, turn all the way to the right, look over your left shoulder and go back. Just don't go into the parking spaces behind you. And then put the car in drive, turn all the way left, and then of course roll forward and stay on the right side of the road as you straighten out, because obviously if you straighten out on the wrong side of the road, driving on the wrong side of the road is an automatic failure. And that's it. Also, of course, you might have noticed I was using one hand as I just pulled forward to the left and stuff. Obviously, I'm using the phone in my right hand. Always use 2 hands during your test. If you use one hand, that is an automatic failure. So always use 2 hands. Same thing when you're backing out of that space and you're going to put the car in drive. Keep both hands on the wheel while you're going back until you've totally stopped the car. Only then should you reach down to put the car from reverse back into drive. Because if you take one of your hands off the wheel while you're rolling back to go to shift gears, they can dock you for not using 2 hands. And if you do it more than once, they can fail you. Just be careful about that. Thank you.